The studio lights hummed with a low, electric anticipation, the kind that vibrated beneath polished glass and perfect makeup. Hidden microphones buzzed faintly in the background while producers barked final commands through their earpieces. Camera rigs slid into place like stealth machines preparing for a covert strike. It was nearly showtime in Washington, D.C., but the real war wasn't behind the cameras. It was about to unfold in front of them. Representative Jasmine Crockett sat still beneath the spotlight, her expression calm, unreadable. She'd been through this dance before. Panels, interviews, debates where her words were sliced apart and served cold to an audience that had already chosen their dinner. But tonight was different. Tonight wasn't about scoring points or avoiding traps. Tonight was about confrontation. Across from her, former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi flipped casually through her note cards, her lips curled into a familiar, patronizing smirk. She didn't need to prep, not really. Her lines had been rehearsed. For decades, sound bites about law and order, American values, and the slow decay of personal responsibility. The old script, the safe one. Her eyes drifted over to Jasmine briefly, then away as if Crockett were just another bullet point in her binder. Jasmine didn't blink. Behind them, rows of audience members shuffled in their seats, unsure if they were here for a political debate or the next chapter in a cultural war. Some had come to cheer. Some had come to heckle. Most came to witness. The screen above the set flickered on with the title of the program, Face the Divide, Live Town Hall, Jasmine's. She-Fade leaned in, whispering in her ear. Bondi's going to hit you early. They're betting you'll react. Jasmine gave a small nod but said nothing. In her mind, it wasn't Pam Bondi she was facing. It was the system Bondi represented. The polished cruelty behind a million polite decisions. The kind of America that could smile as it suffocated you, the moderator, a polished anchor with a reputation for pretending neutrality, stepped into the frame and adjusted his suit. "We're living 60 seconds, he said, voice clipped. With caffeine and control, Pam Bondi straightened her jacket and tapped her mic. Jasmine adjusted nothing. Her poise was practiced, but her silence had an edge like the held breath before a courtroom verdict. She looked once at the camera lens, then past it, as if trying to see the people behind it. The mothers, the students, the men wrongfully imprisoned. The names too numerous to fit on screen. 30 seconds, Jasmine thought of the folder tucked beneath her seat. Receipts, the kind the public never saw. She hadn't decided when she'd use it, but she would. 20 seconds. Pam Bondi leaned toward the moderator and said with a laugh, "Let's make this civil tonight." Jasmine turned her head slowly, meeting her eyes. "Let's make it honest. Double quotes 10. The studio hushed. Red light. The cameras blinked to life. A voice from the booth called out over the silence. "We are live." And just like that, the illusion of civility was over. Asterisk, the first question was deliberately mild, a softball tossed underhand to let the audience settle. "What does justice mean in America today?" The moderator asked, his voice smooth, polished, practiced. It was the kind of question meant to draw platitudes, a safe opening to a conversation they all knew would not stay safe for long. Pam Bondi leaned in first. She smiled the way a career prosecutor smiles in a courtroom where the verdict was never in doubt. "Justice," she began, "starts with personal responsibility. We live in a country built on law and order. When we allow emotions to cloud judgment, when we excuse criminal behavior because of background or belief, we unravel the very fabric of the Constitution." Some in the audience nodded. Some didn't. The camera found Jasmine Crockett, face still, her eyes studying Bondi like a surgeon studying a tumor's spread before cutting. "I believe in accountability," Bondi continued, "but we cannot keep dividing this nation into victims and villains. We need to stop excusing bad behavior under the guise of systemic oppression. If we keep telling people they're oppressed, they'll start acting like it." That last sentence landed like a spark on dry brush. The moderator turned to Jasmine, "Congresswoman Crockett." She didn't rush, her fingers laced calmly in her lap. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but deliberate. Each word carried like a weight passed hand to hand across generations. "You speak of law and order," she said, "but I've lived in neighborhoods where the law was the threat, And the order was a weapon. You want to talk personal responsibility? I've watched children hold dying friends because the system was too busy policing survival to protect them. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Pam smiled thinly. That's emotional rhetoric. We're here to talk policy. Jasmine tilted her head. Policy is what created those stories. When a black child is shot in the back for fitting a description, that's not a tragedy, it's a legislative outcome. And when you sit on TV and dismiss that pain as emotional rhetoric, you don't sound civil, Pam. You sound complicit. The audience tensed. Bondi interjected. That's an unfair accusation. And so were the arrests and the trials. And the mandatory minimums. And the silence that followed, Jasmine said, each word heavier than the last. But let's be fair tonight, Pam. Let's be honest. Because truth has receipts. The moderator blinked. The air crackled. A slow tension crept through the studio. The script was already unraveling. The line between policy and personhood had been crossed and neither of them was going back. Pam Bondi adjusted her mic with the grace of someone who'd done this 100 times. She smiled, not wide, not warm, but calculated. A courtroom smile. One she used when the jury was on edge and she needed to remind them who looked like control. You know, she said, voice light as air, it's interesting that Representative Crockett speaks so much about injustice given her record. Jasmine didn't flinch. Bondi continued. During the 2020 riots, protests, she was one of the attorneys defending individuals who attacked law enforcement. Men caught on tape with bricks in their hands. Officers in the hospital, and she calls that justice? The audience rippled with murmurs. The moderator leaned forward slightly, sensing danger but not intervening. A producer behind the glass raised her eyebrows. This was off script. Jasmine sat perfectly still. Then she exhaled just once and leaned into her mic. I defended a 17-year-old who was arrested for handing out water bottles at a protest, she said calmly. The officers said he matched a description. That boy was held in custody for 36 hours without a phone call. They beat him, broke 2 ribs. Then they released him with no charge and no apology. She paused. Her voice lowered, not in weakness, but in warning. Let's not pretend you don't know how the game is played. Pam, you built a career protecting systems that punish the powerless for surviving, Pam chuckled. So you're saying the law doesn't matter if someone's had a hard life? Jasmine leaned in slightly. I'm saying the law loses its legitimacy when it's only enforced on the desperate. Bondi's smile tightened. Oh, come on, Jasmine. That's a dangerous message to send to young people. Jasmine's tone sharpened. No, Pam, you know it's dangerous. A system that demands obedience from the oppressed while excusing cruelty. From the powerful, that 17-year-old? He hasn't walked right since the arrest. His spine will never be the same. But you're worried about a message? The audience was silent. The moderator tried to pivot. Let's move to a broader question. No, Jasmine said firmly, her voice steady. She brought up my work. Let's finish it. Pam blinked. For the first time, she looked less sure. Jasmine's eyes locked on hers. You used your power to protect institutions. I used mine to defend people. And if you think that's the same battlefield, then you're already losing the war. The room held its breath. A few in the audience clapped quietly. Tentatively. Pam reached for her water. Jasmine didn't move. While the studio air thickened with tension. Outside its walls, the internet roared to life. Within minutes of Jasmine's last line, you used your power to protect institutions. I used mine to defend people. Twitter ignited like a powder keg. Clips from the live feed exploded across timelines. Hashtags like hashtag Crockett vs. Bondi, hashtag receipt season, and hashtag justice is not polite began trending across the country. Activists reposted Jasmine's speech. Conservative influencers scrambled to reframe the moment as hostile, divisive, emotional outbursts from a far-left radical. Inside the control room, the director stood over a panel of screens, each broadcasting live reactions from social media dashboards. We're at 1.8 million concurrent viewers, she whispered to no one in particular, blinking. We've never hit numbers like this before. A technician pulled up a trending post from an independent journalist. It showed Bondi's forced smile right after Jasmine's comeback, captioned, "The moment she knew she lost the crowd." Back in the studio, the debate rolled on, but now every sentence was being sliced and reserved online within seconds. Bondi continued her policy-heavy speech about community investment and restoring national unity, but her voice sounded muted like a politician trying to regain balance in a world that had already moved on. Jasmine, meanwhile, was still focused. Her silence between Bondi's points was more powerful than rebuttal. The live chat window on the network stream overflowed with comments like, "Did she just end a career on live TV?" Jasmine's calm is scarier than yelling. That silence was louder than Pam's whole campaign. Even in the building, phones began buzzing. A producer in the back stepped away from his monitor and showed a staffer a breaking headline. Bondi faces firestorm after Crockett dismantles policing defense live on air. Pam's team knew what was happening. Her assistant, seated just off stage, furiously typed notes into a tablet. "Steer convo back to unity plus crime stats." Don't let her control the moral frame, but it was too late. The narrative had shifted. The country wasn't watching a policy debate anymore. They were watching a symbolic trial, power versus principle, control versus conscience, and they had already begun picking sides. As Bondi pushed through a point about recidivism rates, Jasmine finally leaned forward again, just enough to be captured clearly on camera, and said with a slow, razor-soft voice, "You keep quoting data, Pam. I've buried the names behind it." A moment of silence, then the chat feed exploded again. One viewer tweeted, "Some stats are stained with blood. She just reminded us whose." And across the country, people watching from dorm rooms, bus stops, nursing homes, and courtroom offices weren't just observing anymore. They were bearing witness. Asterisk, the second commercial break arrived like a breath no one dared to exhale. The studio lights dimmed just slightly, cueing the illusion of calm. Makeup artists rushed in with powder and tissues. Water bottles were placed quietly on the desk. The moderator leaned back, rotating his shoulder like a man halfway through a storm. He didn't expect to survive. Jasmine Crockett sat motionless. Then a studio technician approached her without meeting her eyes. He slipped a burner phone beneath her notepad, silent, black, anonymous. Jasmine glanced down. No one else seemed to notice. A single text lit the screen. "Pam's team has something from your past. It's coming in next segment. Be ready." Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen for 3 seconds. Then she turned it face down across the table. Pam Bondi looked refreshed. Her lips were reglossed, her smile re-strategized. She leaned in to speak softly, off mic. "Don't take it personal," she said, voice saccharine. "It's just politics." Jasmine didn't look up. Her voice was low, flat. "It's always just politics until someone bleeds." Bondi's smile faltered, was the flicker. Then she leaned back, her aide just off camera, was nodding at her 2 fingers tapped to a folder labeled Crockett Case 2013. Whatever was in it, they believed it would stick, but Jasmine had already made peace with the possibility. She wasn't here tonight to protect herself. She wasn't even here to argue. She was here to pull back the curtain. No matter how ugly the theater behind it turned out to be, the countdown echoed once more. 10 seconds. Her chief of staff stepped to the edge of the stage. He caught her eye and raised a single brow. She gave the subtlest nod, barely visible, but enough. 3, 2, 1. The red light returned. Jasmine sat straighter now. Not in defense, but in defiance, she whispered to herself, not loud enough for the mic to catch. Let them try. Because she knew something Pam Bondi didn't. You can't shame someone who's already told the truth. And tonight, the truth was coming for all of them. Asterisk, the moderator turned to Pam Bondi as the cameras rolled back to life, his voice composed but a beat slower than before, as if even he was wary of what was about to happen. We'll now move into questions about criminal defense work and public safety, he said. Ms. Bondi, you wanted to respond to earlier points? Pam smiled politely. Thank you. I think it's important that viewers understand the pattern here. Representative Crockett has made a career out of defending individuals who actively resist law enforcement. And that's not a judgment, it's a fact. She turned slightly toward Jasmine now, her voice cooling. In 2013, she defended a man charged with assaulting a police officer during a traffic stop. The officer required stitches. The man walked away with probation thanks in part to Miss Crockett's ability to turn a courtroom into a political platform. The room tightened. The audience sat stiff, eyes darting between the two women like spectators before a verdict. The moderator raised his hand as if to redirect, but Jasmine gently touched her mic, signaling she had something to say. She looked directly at Pam. You left out a few details. Her voice was steady like a fuse lit in silence. That man was a 22-year-old first-generation college student named Terrell Johnson. He was pulled over for a broken taillight, no drugs, no gun, no warrants. The body cam mysteriously malfunctioned that night. The officer claimed he lunged at him. She paused, but in court I showed the bruises on his back, his ribs, his spine. They found fragments of a baton in his sweatshirt. The jury didn't hear that part because it was deemed prejudicial, but I did. And I watched his mother tremble while listening to a courtroom call him a threat. Pam interrupted with mock sympathy. That doesn't justify attacking an officer. Jasmine didn't blink. He didn't attack anyone. He flinched. And he paid for that instinct with a spinal injury he still lives with today. But what he never got was an apology. The audience was silent. Somewhere, a chair creaked. See, Jasmine continued, leaning in just slightly. You want to talk about patterns? Let's talk about your pattern. Pam, declining to prosecute corruption in Florida when it came from men who donated to your campaign. Turning a blind eye to officers with 2, 3, 4 excessive force complaints because it was politically convenient. Pam narrowed her eyes. You're deflecting. No, Jasmine said quietly. I'm documenting. She reached beneath the desk and pulled out a slim manila folder. You brought up one case? I brought receipts. The folder slapped softly against the desk as she laid it down. The camera zoomed slightly. On its tab, bold black marker read, Undisclosed cases. PBTH crowd didn't gasp, didn't cheer, they just stared. Because the shift wasn't theatrical, it was surgical. Pam Bondi had come to discredit Jasmine's past, but Jasmine had come to expose hers. The moderator hesitated, visibly unsure of what to do next. This wasn't in the run sheet. Pam Bondi's expression had frozen mid-smile, as if her mouth hadn't gotten the signal that the mood had changed. Jasmine didn't speak right away. She let the folder sit in front of her like a sealed indictment, her fingers resting on its edges. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was low, careful. I was going to save this for a later segment. But since we're pulling files from 10 years ago, let's stay consistent. She flipped open the folder slowly, deliberately. A list of names printed in neat columns. Case numbers, dates, districts. These, she said, her voice steady, are 8 cases, 8, where your office declined to prosecute law enforcement officers involved in violent misconduct. In one, the victim was a 15-year-old girl slammed to the pavement outside her school for skipping class. She had a seizure on the ground, no charges filed. The audience didn't gasp. They stilled. In another, a man died in jail. You closed the case in 4 days with no autopsy. The officer involved had already been disciplined twice for excessive force, but he kept his badge under your watch. Pam cut in sharp. You're misrepresenting the facts. Jasmine didn't even look at her. She looked to the audience. Now, directly, I'm not here to misrepresent. I'm here because for every file in this folder, there's a family who never got closure, a mother who never got a phone call, a community that learned justice doesn't knock on every door. Someone in the studio audience stood up. A woman, middle-aged, tightly clutching a scarf between her fingers. Her voice was fragile but clear. My brother was one of those names. The room turned toward her. Pam blinked. Ma'am, The woman spoke louder now, shaking. We begged your office. We brought witnesses. And you never even called us back. Silence. Jasmine turned slowly to face Pam. You want to talk about justice? She asked. Then let's talk about the silence you wrapped it in. The silence. That killed louder than any bullet, Pam's jaw clenched. This is a smear campaign. No, Jasmine said. This is testimony. The moderator tried to interject, clearly rattled. We need to stay on topic. Jasmine cut him off gently, never raising her voice. This is the topic. And just like that, the room no longer belonged to the showrunners, the producers, or the politicians. It belonged to the people who had lived through what they'd only ever watched others debate. Pam sat straighter, lips pursed, knuckles pale, against the desk. For the first time that night, she looked genuinely afraid. Not of Jasmine, but of the truth unraveling around her and who else might be ready to speak. Asterisk for a few suspended seconds. No one moved. The woman in the audience, gripping her scarf like it was all she had left, had pierced something sacred. Not with rage, not with drama, but with raw, unrehearsed truth. The producers scrambled off camera, whispering into earpieces. One tried waving the woman down, but it was too late. The audience wasn't looking at the stage anymore. They were looking at her, and Jasmine? She didn't interrupt. She turned fully in her chair and listened. The woman cleared her throat. My brother's name was Marcus Delian. He was arrested for a traffic violation, a busted taillight. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. 2 hours later, he was dead in a holding cell. We were told he fell, but there were bruises on his ribs and wrists. My mother went to your office 3 times, Ms. Bondi. She begged you. Pam Bondi's smile had vanished completely now. Jasmine didn't need to say a word. The woman continued, voice trembling. You never returned our calls? You never sent anyone to explain? You left us with silence. And now I watch you talk about law and order like it's a brand. The studio was frozen. Pam tried to respond. But even the moderator seemed unsure whether to move on or lean in. Ma'am, we appreciate your courage, but for legal purposes Jasmine spoke up now, clear and unwavering. Let her finish. The woman wiped a tear. I only came tonight to watch. I didn't plan to speak. But when I saw her, she pointed at Jasmine, pull out those files, I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew someone remembered us. Then she sat back down, a beat passed. Then too, the moderator finally regained his footing. All right. We'll now turn to closing statements. But the segment had already closed itself. In homes across the country, people rewound the moment, screenshot the woman's face, Googled Marcus Delian. And in that silence, a wave began to build, quiet but furious. Pam Bondi adjusted her mic with shaking fingers. I've served this country with honor. She began, but the air had shifted. Honor was no longer measured in years served or positions held. It was measured in who had dared to listen and who had not. Asterisk, the cameras stayed on. But it felt like something had broken free, something no producer could cage. Pam Bondi straightened, forcing calm into her voice. I won't be tried in the court of public opinion, she said, each word clipped. This is political theater, not legal review. But her words landed hollow like someone reading a script that no longer fit the room. Jasmine didn't flinch. She leaned forward slightly, voice almost soft. If this were political theater, you'd be in makeup, not under oath of your own record, Pam scoffed. You don't get to play judge and jury. I'm not, Jasmine said. But that's the public's job. I just bring the evidence they were never shown. She held up another paper. This is a memo. Dated 2016. Your office was warned about Officer Hale before he broke a man's jaw during a routine stop. The recommendation was clear. Remove him from duty. You signed off on ignoring it. Pam's face turned a shade paler. That document is taken out of context. Jasmine laid it down flat on the desk. The context is the man can't chew on his left side anymore. The moderator tried again. Miss Crockett, we need to wrap this round. Jasmine turned to him, not combatively, but like a professor to a student. You invited me here to speak about justice. Not the decorative version? The real one. She turned back to Pam. You built a career on phrases like law and order, but you never asked whose laws, whose order, whose silence bought your peace. Pam snapped. Your grandstanding? No, Jasmine interrupted calmly. I'm breaking the silence you built your platform on. And suddenly the studio wasn't silent anymore. A murmur rippled through the audience, heads nodding. Some clapping, cautiously, others recording. Pam's hands gripped the desk. She smiled again, but it was brittle, hollow. This is all political, she said, almost whispering. Jasmine's reply was quiet too, but it landed like a gavel. No, this is personal. Because injustice always is, the lights above hummed. The air felt electric. Something irreversible had happened, not because of the volume, but because the truth had entered the room wearing a human face, and this time, it refused to leave. Asterisk, the broadcast ended, but the real show had just begun, within minutes of Jasmine's final line. This is personal. Because injustice always is, the clip was everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, edited, unedited, overlaid with captions like, "She destroyed Pam Bondi and the silence ends tonight." Within the hour, hashtags like #CrockettTruth and #PamVSJustice were trending across the country. The moment had cracked through the surface of news cycles and into the bloodstream of the culture. Jasmine sat alone in the green room, her phone buzzing nonstop. Her chief of staff, Layla, burst in, wide-eyed. "You need to see this," she said, handing Jasmine an iPad. It was a split screen. Jasmine's confrontation against Pam, juxtaposed with footage from a 2017 protest. Bondi had condemned protesters marching for a man her office had quietly declined to investigate. Jasmine didn't need narration to know what it meant. Receipts were being pulled, and the internet was building a timeline. In a nearby studio, Pam Bondi stood frozen in front of her comms team. Her press secretary was pale. "We're hemorrhaging support from moderate independents." Even Fox News is quoting Jasmine, whose silence bought your peace is being called the line of the year. Pam paced, unblinking. "They want blood. They're not getting mine." Her lawyer, a white-collar fixer named Greer, leaned in. "Then you need to sue her. Defamation. Force her into a courtroom." Pam snapped around. "You think putting us on trial together again is smart?" Greer shrugged. "It'll reset the narrative. You're the victim now." Emotional damage, political sabotage, flip the script. Pam hesitated. Then slowly her face hardened. File it. Back in D.C., Jasmine stared at the headline. Breaking, Pam Bondi plans defamation lawsuit against Representative Jasmine Crockett. Layla looked up from her phone. "She wants to silence you in court." Jasmine put down the iPad. "Then let's give her a courtroom," she said. "And this time I'll bring more than words. I'll bring everything she tried to bury." Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, a political storm was just beginning. And this time, everyone would be watching. Asterisk, the official court filing dropped at 9:02 a.m. sharp. Bondi v. Crockett, civil defamation and emotional damages. A 26-page document accusing Jasmine Crockett of knowingly and maliciously defaming Ms. Bondi's character on live television. Cable news devoured it within minutes. Every outlet, from CNN to OANN, aired split-screen footage of the broadcast moment in question. On one side, Jasmine Crockett, fierce, composed, unapologetic. On the other, Pam Bondi, looking stunned, eyes narrowed, lips tight. Jasmine stood outside the Capitol building, her coat billowing in the cold wind as microphones swarmed her. "This lawsuit isn't about defamation," she said calmly. "It's about silencing truth, and I won't apologize for speaking it." When asked if she'd consider settling, her response echoed everywhere. "You don't settle with systems, you confront them." Meanwhile, Bondi's PR team began spinning. She appeared on conservative talk shows in a controlled media blitz, tearfully describing her emotional suffering and the public humiliation inflicted by Crockett's accusations. "I was targeted because I stood for law and order," Pam told one anchor. "I was dragged through the mud by someone who's more interested in headlines than justice." The court of public opinion split down ideological lines. Progressives rallied behind Jasmine, crowdfunding her legal team. Within 24 hours, conservatives framed the suit as the beginning of a new war on leftist incivility. The center? They watched, curious, unsure which way history would lean. Backstage, Jasmine met with her counsel, Amina Shah, a sharp, fast-talking civil rights attorney who had taken down city police unions and big pharma execs. Amina glanced over the complaint and shook her head. They think this is a reputation case, she muttered. They have no idea what door they just opened. Jasmine leaned in. Then let's kick it open wider, Amina smirked. Good. Because we're not just going to defend you. We're going to put Pam Bondi's record, and every ghost behind it, on trial. And with that, the tone shifted. This wasn't just a civil case anymore. It was a reckoning, and the courtroom would be the battleground. The courtroom buzzed with a rare energy, part political theater, part legal war zone. Every bench was filled. Journalists, interns, activists, and silent observers sat shoulder to shoulder under high ceilings and gold-plated fixtures. The walls seemed to hum with anticipation as Judge Monica Reyes, known for her no-nonsense demeanor and deep belief in judicial independence, entered the chamber. Jasmine Crockett arrived flanked by Amina Shah and her legal team, dressed in a muted navy suit, calm but charged. Across the aisle, Pam Bondi sat rigid, her team curated and camera-ready. Her lead attorney, Randall Thurman, a polished but ethically gray litigator, whispered into her ear as flashbulbs clicked. Opening statements hit like thunderclaps. Thurman painted Jasmine as reckless, media-hungry, and malicious. He replayed the live TV moment where Jasmine exposed Bondi's prosecutorial past, complete with inflammatory headlines and social media backlash. He framed the case as an attack on a woman's professional dignity, a defamation disguised as moral outrage. Then came Amina. She didn't pace. She didn't shout. Instead, she stepped into the center and let silence breathe. We are here, she began softly, because Pam Bondi wants you to forget. Her voice grew stronger with every word. Forget the mothers who never saw justice, the boys tried as men. The civil rights violations swept under the rug. She turned toward Bondi and spoke directly. This lawsuit isn't about reputation, it's about record. And when truth is inconvenient, the powerful try to sue it into silence. Gasps, cameras, even Judge Reyes raised an eyebrow. The first witness, a mother whose son had been tried as an adult under Bondi's administration, took the stand. Her voice quivered as she recounted the pain, the policies. The press silence. Pam shifted in her seat. Then came defense expert Dr. Malik Enzo, a former Department of Justice ethics advisor. He laid out the prosecutorial data, the racial disparities, the sentencing records, the ignored civil complaints under Bondi's watch. The facts hit like stones.